from the emergency trigger warning system. You have entered a no-safe space zone. You are now at risk of exposure to ideas and opinions that could make you uncomfortable and possibly even make you think. If you have entered this zone in error, please reach for the pacifier located under your seat and brace for fallout. And now, welcome to the stage, Adam Carolla!
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming out. It is funny when I was, God, wow, the times are changing. I was backstage when I pulled up. I was met by the chief of police, and she wanted to know my general discomfort level when it came to people heckling me and or saying things that may invade my emotional space, and I said, I have no discomfort level. I grew up in North Hollywood. My buddy Ray weighed 40 pounds more than me. He stabbed me in the knee once, and on another occasion, smashed a fully engulfed lit marshmallow into the side of my face. So I looked like the only 13-year-old in North Hollywood who had herpes the following day. So she said, well, if you become uncomfortable with the way someone is speaking to you, you can summon one of us up on stage. And I said, you could physically attack me and I would be fine with it. I have no discomfort level whatsoever. Now, that being said, if I was attacked by a bear, I might make a sound if no one was around. In front of you guys, I'd be too embarrassed. But in general, when it comes to the topics we're talking about, in your space, in your safe space, in the space people have invaded, and the space they've invaded with their ideas or their words, just do what I do when it comes to shaking people's hands who say they're sick and want to give me an elbow bump. I just explain to them, I don't get sick, put her there. And if you go through life with, I don't get sick and I don't get offended, it's going to be a much better run. The person I'm going to bring up in a second, of course, is Dennis Prager. I was always a Dennis Prager fan for years and years and years, listening to him on Religion on the Line, even though I'm an atheist. That's how good he was. I've always been a huge Dennis Prager fan. He never knew who the hell I was because I was not involved with Russian mythology, and I didn't live in a cigar store, and I didn't spin Mozart or Brahms or Bach, so he had no idea who I was, but I was always a huge fan of his, and I'm tickled pink that we were able to come together some years ago, and I think I've made him a fan of myself as well, although he'll never be as big a fan of me as I am of his because of his insane, prodigious wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, the smartest man I know, Dennis Prager, here. He's got a cold. We hit elbows. It's always a treat, Dennis. It really is. I love truth. I love wisdom. I love clarity. I think like you do. There's a chemical attraction that I have to clear thinking, and I don't know why that is sort of going the way of the dodo these days. But and so is the saying, going the way of the dodo, has actually gone the way of the dodo.
All right, a lot of comments. First, hi, everybody, and hello, Adam, and thank you for coming, everybody. Just want to say, he only said one thing incorrect. Well, there might have been a few. It sounds like I'm accepting every compliment is real. But I know you meant it, but I want you to know, and I think you know, I'm as big a fan of you as vice versa. Just want you to know that. I am a later convert. I do admit that. But you have converted me thoroughly. I love being with you. You have an original mind that is tack sharp. You observe things. You see things that most people don't see. And
Well,
that is, and then you comment with expletives.
Well, can we let's talk about seeing things for a second. I believe I see things sometimes that other people don't see because I approach everything from a sort of neutral position so that I can see things. I don't have a whole lot of preconceived notions. I'm not loaded up with laundry list of talking points, and so I'm able to show up and assess and then make a decision and then see things maybe that other people can't see. And I have always said to everybody, you know, when they say, geez, you're quick-witted or you're fast or you're quick to the draw, how do you do that? And I always said, have a conversation like you're playing center field in baseball. Don't be leaning one way. Don't be leaning forward. Don't be leaning to the right or to the left. Just be in a very neutral stance, and where the ball goes, you go. You can't get a jump on it if you're leaning one way or leaning the other way.
Well, that's, by the way, the secret to clarity, because you raised the clarity issue. I've thought about this a lot, because I do believe I have clarity, and I believe that is one of the biggest reasons, because I don't have an agenda. Let me give you one example. This notion that Donald Trump is a misogynist. I don't care if you like Donald Trump, don't like Donald Trump, I don't care. It's irrelevant to my point. He's not a misogynist, and there's not the slightest evidence that he's a misogynist. The fact that he made that comment, that that when you're famous and rich, women let you grope them. It's gross, it's childish. It was also made in private to another guy. He was talking reality. If every one of your conversations that you ever made privately were recorded, you would all be hounded out of public life. There is no exception in this room. And so there's nothing misogynistic about it. But if you have an agenda that he said that, and therefore he must hate women, one has nothing to do with the other. That's non-clarity.
I had a interesting, go ahead. It's funny, I was talking to a guy, just sort of regular guy, sort of working class guy on Sunday. We're hanging out a little bit. And I've had to sort of explain the context of what Donald Trump said to a lot of people because, and I basically said to him, this fella, I know the guy is from a place called Sterling, Illinois, small part in outside of Chicago. He's from Sterling. And I said, and his name is Kelly. And I said, Kelly, what Donald Trump said is like you saying to me, when I go back to Sterling, I could rob a bank and they wouldn't arrest me. That's how popular I am in Sterling. And then I wrote headlines that said, Kelly wants to rob banks.
Right.
You were using hyperbole, and the reality is, as much as you may disagree with the language, saying I could go up to a strange woman and compliment her on her blouse is not hyperbole. It's actually something anyone could do. I could go up to a woman and pat her on the rear end is not going to get a reaction out of people. I can tell you, as somebody who tells jokes for a living, you have to go to the extreme to make a point. So what Trump was doing in his locker room conversation with Billy Bush was, I could do this and get away with that. The whole point to the hyperbole is that he wouldn't do it and doesn't do it. The point is, I could do this and still get away with it. That's what TV and stardom does.
Right, which is a perfectly valid, gross point. But listen to this. In the Atlantic Monthly, which is considered a prestigious journal, I read just last week, the description of his comment was that Donald Trump said that he gropes women without their permission.
Right.
That's a lie. That is a lie. He never said that. His whole point was they give you permission, as you point out.
Yes.
But this is why there's, back to your clarity point. And by the way, you know who have the least clarity? This is part of our agenda, I suspect, this evening. But this is, I truly believe this, I literally believe this. If you have a PhD in the social sciences, you are deprived of clarity. It is, there are some PhDs in sociology who have clarity, but they got their degree in Azerbaijan, not in the Western world, where they probably still seriously teach. But in the Western world, to have an advanced degree, I assume that you don't think clearly. I know that there are some people who have a PhD who think clearly, obviously, but my assumption is that you don't. And you know, I just want to tell you one little quick story on this. I think I may have mentioned to you when you were on my show on Monday.
Dennis, can I say this?
Yeah.
You don't have quick stories, you have medium and long.
Is that right? Is that
You're
true?
like McDonald's. We don't have a small. We have a medium and large Coke. We don't have a small Coke.
All right, so I'll tell you a medium. Here's a medium.
Okay.
So
de facto, it'll be a small.
Okay, that's even better. Mm-hmm. Samuel Alito is one of the Supreme Court justices, and I was honored to be the MC at a program he spoke at this Saturday night. He pointed out something about this. He said, we only had one president with a PhD, Woodrow Wilson, and he was awful and super progressive. He was truly a disaster for America and the world. And he said, you know who the least educated president was? The least formally educated was Abraham Lincoln. What a point.
Yeah. We should probably pick cabins to do these speeches versus college campuses, because
Oh, we're on a college campus. That's right. Yeah.
We should pick cabins out in the woods. We should go speak at the Unabomber shack. I feel that's a better story for that audience.
He went to Harvard.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. It doesn't work.
That's right. I think they just took down Shakespeare's poster and put up the Unabomber's poster.
Right.
So now, you know, I was quoted in the, I think it was the Washington Post today. They did some sort of article about me. What was that, Washington Post that we showed you before?
Yeah.
And it's just something I've always said, which is stupid or liar. And I've always said it, and I've always had difficulty with it because I can't tell when we're talking about some of the stories we're talking about, does the person actually believe this? And I'm assuming they don't because, take this in the spirit in which it's intended, they're educated, they're living in 2017, they're able to operate a motor vehicle safely. I don't believe that they believe it. So thus it makes them a liar, but there's a sort of a new world, which is it's okay to lie if the lie is morally defensible or somehow I have God on my side. So in other words, if somebody breaks into your home and holds you at gunpoint, and wants to know if your children are home, and you know they're in the room underneath the bed, you're allowed to lie and say, no one's here but me, take me hostage. That's a lie, but you're doing it, you have God on your side. A study just came out on secondhand smoke. I've been yelling about this for at least 15 years with Dr. Drew. I used to pass billboards in Hollywood that said, 47,000 Americans die of secondhand smoke every year. I once asked my partner, Dr. Drew, if he could research it a little bit. Now, we all know, now here's how you all know you're an expert on everything. If you think about the loved ones who've been claimed by secondhand smoke, the luminaries, the notables, the celebrities, the politicians, the cavalcade of who's who over the past 50 years who've been claimed by secondhand smoke, if you scratch your brain and you can think of no human being you've ever heard of being claimed by secondhand smoke, then you know without looking at any data whatsoever, it's a lie.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. This is
but what I'm saying is we're all smarter than the experts because we're not staring at data that's trying to influence us.
Right.
If I said to you, hey, come on, cancer doesn't exist. No one knows anyone. My wife's best friend was killed by cancer. I know many people have been killed by cancer. You would go, no, hold on, that's incorrect. But if I say secondhand smoke and the answer is 0, then we're all experts, and it does not claim people.
well. It's those of you who've listened to me over the years just know how this has been a pet peeve of mine. I've been so angry. I actually, for a while, was bottling secondhand smoke and selling it. I was selling it, as a souvenir. Dennis Prager's secondhand smoke. I'd breathe into a bottle, vacuum seal it, and you had my secondhand smoke. And if you ever felt particularly healthy, you would be able to breathe it in and die. It's just a painless way of dying. So you are so right, though, on this expert issue, because this was what I said to my listeners when it first came out. I said, both my parents smoked. My brother and I are 100% healthy. My whole generation was raised with secondhand smoke. I had more secondhand smoke than I did nursing milk. I mean, I should be dead. My mother didn't nurse me. My mother gave me a bottle. And I was allowed to play in the dirt. I was allowed to go anywhere I wanted at 5, and I was in a home with a cigarette and cigar smoker. I never get sick. I think that is the methodology for raising a healthy child, just for the record. By the way, they do say that now. I'm not kidding. Do you know that they actually say your child should play in dirt? And they do say give your child peanuts at an early age, then they won't develop an allergy.
I'm going to invent a peanut-flavored cigarette.
Yes.
I will then smoke it and blow it into the face of my 10-year-old twins because I love them so much. I love them.
Yes, because you love them.
Right.
That's right, yes. In fact, you could have the smoke come out as a big L.
Yes, love.
Yes,
yes.
love.
I was the same way with the Purell, all the hand washing, all the Purell, all the sanitizing, all the antibacterial soap. I was like, no, not for me. And everyone's like, you got to do it. It's the latest craze. All the stuff that first off, I do not know why we listen to scientists anymore. And here's what I'm saying. And I'm not. You're talking to an atheist who doesn't have a social agenda. I'm not saying there's not room for scientists and we should not listen to them. But what I'm saying is all the things I've heard over the years, especially coming from the left, has been mostly debunked. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley right here, playing football, doing two-a-days out in the San Fernando Valley in the hot sun, running sprints and wind sprints and everything else. And even though we weren't, it wasn't 1844, it was 1975, they wouldn't give you water because they thought water was bad for you. We have, just the relationship I've had with water in my life on this planet. My young life was no water, you'll cramp up, have a salt tablet, go ahead and suck on a piece of straw over there, but you cannot drink water, you will cramp up, it is bad for you. Then at some point in 2004, people were explaining to me, you must drink your body weight in ounces of water every single day.
Right.
How can that be good for you?
Right.
Now we've come around to you should drink water when you're thirsty.
Yeah. Well, what
How
about
much
eggs?
should we listen to the scientists?
What about the evolution of eggs? Remember the whole thing?
Oh
eggs,
my
eggs,
God!
You'll block your heart. You'll die. Oh my God! You should have maybe 1 or 2 a week. Now it turns out it's like one of the perfect foods between the yolk and what is the white part called?
The white
albumin. Albumin, is that right?
Yeah, I know.
I don't know anything about kitchen
I
things.
just had a conversation with a nutritionist, and I said to him, what is a very healthy breakfast to eat if you're looking to shed a couple of pounds? And he said, make yourself a couple of eggs. And then he paused and he said, go ahead and add the yolk.
Don't forget to add the yolk.
Add
Yes.
a third yolk
add a third
to
yolk.
a couple of eggs. So to all of us who've been
Right.
eating egg white omelets,
Yeah.
by the way, egg white omelets taste
Right.
like you took that styrofoam insulation in a can that you use to stop the draft around your windows
Yes.
and sprayed it into a skillet and cut a scallion up on top of it. That's what we've been doing. Then we've been eating dry toast with no butter. But okay, we're feeling naughty. Give me a little margarine. It turns out all of that is bad. And we've been listening to these people our entire lives. Why should we start listening from this day forward?
My father, may he rest in peace, so many of you who have listened to my show heard, because I had him on every July 18th on his birthday. And he died at 96. And he smoked about 4 cigars a day on a bad day, and had a very serious amount of scotch, and lived. He was as healthy as a horse till he left us, basically. And it reminds me of when I was with not Danny Kaye. Who was the guy who died at nearly 100? George Burns. So I have no, I'm not bragging here. This is my son, my stepson, my wife are here, so you can't lie in front of your family, okay? Because you'll have hell to pay when you get home. I have no interest in celebrities. I never did, even as a kid. I liked interesting, good people. I didn't care if they were a celebrity. But when I heard that George Burns loved my show, and oddly enough, you know who contacted his accountant? It's very funny. His accountant was his leeway.
How old was he? 172? I feel like you're older than George Burns' accountant.
Yes, that's right.
Because your accountant always has to be older than you.
Good point.
And he's 100.
I don't know how old the accountant was. But anyway, I went to his house because he said he's a big fan, so we went. During the 2 hours or so I spent with him, he had 3 cigars and 2 martinis. And I felt like a straight man. You probably know the line. I said to him, George, does your doctor know about your smoking and drinking? He said, well, Dennis, my doctor is dead. And that did it for me, man. That was it.
I had a very true story. I honestly got a physical about 3 years ago, and the they always do this. Do you drink? And I always have to honestly say, yes. And then they pause and they go, how often? And I go, well, let me have a hit off this flask and really wrestle with that thought. And then I have to be honest and I say, every day. And then they pause and they go, do you smoke? And I go, only when I drink. But it's true, we should all know, at least anecdotally, because every time the news does one of those stories on, Zelda, she's 111 years young.
That's right.
And they're always talking to the woman out on her front porch, and we ask, what is your secret to longevity? Right. She takes 2 Pop-Tarts, puts a slab of brisket between it, and dips it in vermouth, and eats that every day for breakfast. She has to take her chewing tobacco out to get it down. That's what she does for breakfast. And then we all sit there and go, well, look at that, 111 years young. And then we go right back to the egg whites.
That's why I don't know why people fall in for it. Why people, it's so odd. We live in the age of self-esteem, and yet ironically, in the worst sense, people have self-esteem, the unearned awards for doing nothing. In the best sense, though, people don't have it. I always had enough self-esteem to believe that my common sense was pretty powerful. And so when I heard the secondhand smoke, it violated every rule of common sense. The healthiest generation in history grew up with secondhand smoke permeating their lives and not being breastfed. I have no problem with breastfeeding, but I have a problem with the religion of breastfeeding. They're not the same. If you feel it's good, it's good. But this notion that you are depriving your child of health and wisdom or all this stuff, I am into classical music, as you know.
Yes.
I don't know. If you play your baby Mozart when they're in the womb, they'll be smarter. Okay, I find that hard to believe. All right? I mean, I bet you he's very smart, so I will ask you, you've never been asked this. What music did your mother play when you were in her womb?
Well, my mom was a hippie, so I'm guessing it was sitar-driven.
There you go. So the answer is, whatever the hell that was, makes a man smarter. Why don't people, and by the way, even the smart thing is stupid. What difference is the IQ of a person? Do you really believe it matters? Clarity beats intelligence any day of the week. There's no comparison. The number of brilliant people, I don't know my IQ, I don't know my children's IQ, and I don't care. It is of no interest. What difference does it make?
I once took an online IQ test with my wife. I scored in the high 80s. I think I was maybe 88, 89. She whooped the pants off me and then started to mock me, which I used my minimal IQ, but my high clarity level to turn it around on her, which is, you married the idiot. So who's the real idiot in this room?
That is great. Did she have an answer? I'm just curious.
She's been perturbed at me ever since I made this statement.
Yeah, for good reason.
Yeah. She was working at ABC at the time. This is early in our relationship. And she was working in scheduling, and it was sort of a secretary schedule, lower, she made $47,000 a year or something. Nothing wrong with it, but wasn't paying the mortgage on the house in the hills we were living in.
Right.
And I said to her once, listen to me, I bring home the bacon. And she paused and she said, well, I bring home the bacon too. I work full time. I said, no, you bring home the bacos. I bring home the bacon. Because there's no pop reference that Dennis gets. Bacos are miniature pieces of bacon that you sprinkle on salad.
No.
I know that look. I've sat next to Dr. Drew my entire life. Breaking Bad was what?
Okay. I knew the subject.
Yes.
Yes, I have no issue with it.
Yes.
By the way, here's the difference, though. This is another talk about common sense, all right? So I know this is a sensitive subject, but it's just, again, it's truly an issue of clarity. So here is Exhibit A of a man who was raised with white privilege.
Oh, yes.
I'd like you to share with our audience the white privilege, and be honest, okay? You don't understate the amount of privilege that you were raised with.
Well, I want to say this. I got into a semi-heated debate with a black fella who was on public radio and went to the University of Michigan and then got his doctorate in law from University of Michigan as well. And then his wife was vice mayor of Oakland and on the Oakland City Council, and the two of them lived together in Oakland. He has a law degree. If something happens to the mayor of Oakland, she'll step in and save the town, and she's on the city council, and they raised their two children. And what I'm guessing is a fairly comfortable environment, considering they're both professionals and doing relatively well for themselves. Unfortunately, when this gentleman was slated to come onto my podcast, it was the morning after the election. So he had went to bed that night seeing that Donald Trump had won the presidency, and then the first person he saw the following day was moi. And that's Mexican for me, by the way. I don't know how many languages you speak. I don't know if you speak Mexican. He went on a tirade, and this is something that we should dovetail into as well as the privilege, which is this is a 40-something-year-old guy who's, by all accounts, sailed through life. He went to a good university. He got a degree. He went on to get an advanced degree and become an attorney. His wife's well-to-do, and so on and so forth. And now he's in his 40s. He's raising his family, and he's explaining to me that he was going to have to tell his children we were living in a new world now. And basically, they had targets on their back, and if they were going to go to the mailbox, they had to run serpentine because Trump was going to be on the roof with his hat turned backwards, getting him in his crosshairs. Or to be fair, maybe one of his, jackbooted thugs who he'd sent out to do his ethnic cleansing. Right. And I essentially said to him, I would not have that conversation with my kids. I think it's selfish to have that conversation with your kids because you are unnecessarily worrying your kids, and kids don't have perspective. It's on or it's off. If you tell them this, they will assume this is what's going to happen. It's the sort of when a serial killer is on the loose and you assume they're coming after you, even though statistically they're never going to make it into your bedroom, why then say to your kids, pull the blanket over your head and you'll probably never see the morning light? It's very unfair and frankly, very selfish as well. All roads lead to narcissism, I believe, with all of these subjects. But either way, he went on to explain to me I didn't know what I was talking about because of my white privilege. And I said, well, let's examine my white privilege, may we? And I said, I got out of North Hollywood High. I did not go to college. I worked cleaning carpets. I went into restaurants and cleaned carpets. At night, after closing, we'd go into the Sizzler or the Hamburger Hamlet, and we'd stay there till 3 or 4 in the morning cleaning carpets. Later on, I worked on construction sites, not as an apprentice or a carpenter, but as a laborer, digging ditches, mostly cleaning up garbage, picking up after the carpenters, tearing ivy off the side of a hill house and then dragging it up the hill and throwing it in the dumpster. Whatever work donkeys were qualified to do, that's what I did. And I did that for months and years, and at a certain point, when I felt like my white privilege wasn't kicking in at all, Mom was on food stamps and welfare. Dad was, eking out a living and had no extra money or time for anybody else. I said, you know what would be a good job for me? Fireman. I'm strong. I'm eager for the fray. I have no qualms about my personal safety, and I think I would make a good fireman. Plus, I love chili. I love playing foosball, and as far as I could tell, when they're not putting out fires, they're eating chili and playing foosball. So Dennis doesn't know what foosball is.
I do.
Oh, wow,
I do.
he
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
All right. That Jewish fraternity
No, Baco.
really knew how to party.
Yeah. I didn't know Baco. I admit that. Baco, I needed a translation.
So I went down to the fire department in North Hollywood, still there, across from the park in North Hollywood off of Chandler and Tahunga. And I said, I just walked over there and I said, I'm going to put in an application to be a fireman. And they said, fine. I filled it out. I handed it to the guy, and the guy said, don't hold your breath. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, we're not going to be getting to you for some years. And when you're 19 and you're destitute and your stepmom's trying to extricate you from the garage you're living in and you have no job or no real income, the notion of we'll call you in 6 or 7 years if something comes up is not a buoy you cling to. And sure enough, I moved out of the house, and I kept going, and I bought up, my foreman told me if I bought a pickup truck instead of rode a motorcycle to the job site with my tool bags fastened and looped around my neck like a bandolera's belt. He said, I'll give you another $1 an hour. So I promptly sold my motorcycle and bought a used pickup truck. And I was about 25, 26, 5-6 years in my carpentry career. And my dad showed up to my apartment one day, and he had a letter. And he said, this letter came to the house, the old address. It's from the LA Fire Department. And sure enough, there was a date to take the written test at Hollywood High the following weekend. And I said, well, I don't even want to be a fireman anymore, but because I've waited 6 years to be a fireman, I'm going down to Hollywood High on 10 a.m. on Saturday. And I stood in line to get into this place, and I was really sort of marveling at the fact that it'd taken 6 years for them to contact me. Now imagine if I didn't have white privilege. I could have still been waiting. That's today, right. But there was a young lady, very diminutive lady, a small, slightly built lady behind me. Could not tell her nationality. Could have been black, Latino, or mixed, or something like that. And everyone around me, I kept saying, when did you put in your application? When did you put in? And I turned around to her and I said, when did you put in your application? And she said, Tuesday. So I went back to this fellow when we were arguing about white privilege, and I said, I'm not here to tell you it exists or doesn't exist. I'm here to tell you it never existed for me, in which case he just did the ultimate, which is you are the recipient of it, you just don't know it.
Well, let me tell you, I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget it. You said you were told by this the black guest that you had on your show, well, you don't know because you don't know my situation, or you don't know about it because you have white privilege. So listen to this. I had written a piece for a Jewish newspaper in the U.S., the Jewish Journal, and it was about abortion. And I simply asked a question. It had nothing to do with legality, choice, not choice. It was just about the morality of the issue. Is that which a woman is carrying, is it worth a pimple, or is it worth human life? Is it something in the middle? I mean, there's no clarity generally on the abortion issue on the left, because the notion that the only worth of the human fetus is determined by the woman carrying it it makes no sense. It's either worth something or not. Whether you carry it or not, is secondary to whether it has worth. Can a parent kill a child? It's their child. Of course not. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Hold on, none of that talk in front of my kids. I like them to think.
Okay, good. No. They're not here. You warned me about this.
Don't bring that hot wind over to my house. I like that my kids think I can get away with this.
Okay. There was a serious article in the leading Israeli newspaper, or not the leading, but the most prestigious, the New York Times of Israel, called Haaretz. And it was an attack on my article, and this is what the woman wrote. Dennis Prager has no right to speak about abortion. He does not have a uterus. So that's the same thing with this. Sure. You are white, so you cannot address an issue with regard to blacks. So can blacks speak about an issue with regard to whites? And by the way, I really should have said, how do you know I don't have a uterus? Because in the world in which we live, that is no longer determinative. I may have no uterus, but identify as a woman for the sake of that article. No, see, right? Am I right or wrong? Yeah.
You should have your own bathroom.
This is what we have entered. And by the way, on the child abuse, I've actually been saying for years, every black who tells their kid, and these are the upper class blacks, like the New York Times columnist, Charles Blow, who says, I tell my child how racist America is and how dangerous America is. And I have said on the air, and I really watch my language, I have said, I believe that he has abused his child. This is a form of child abuse. Had my parents said to me, You know you're a Jew, Dennis, and there's a lot of anti-Semitism, and you better watch it in America, because there are a lot of anti-Semites in America, and wherever you go, you are going to be looked at as a Jew, and you will be treated as such. He would have handicapped me in life. Instead, my father, who wrote his thesis in college on anti-Semitism in America, said to me almost every time we spoke, "You don't know how lucky you are to be an American." And I was blessed by that.
Hold on, you're Jewish? It's something I was thinking about, and this just jarred my memory, but I was talking to a friend of my wife's, and we were talking about this sort of taking of the language and twisting it, where Hobby Lobby, because of their beliefs, aren't going to pay for birth control, and that turns into denying access to birth control. Right. And I said to this person who I was getting into it with, I said, that's not denying access to birth control. That is, you're responsible for your own birth control. And she said, no, it's denying. And I said, does Hobby Lobby pay for the lunch of every one of their employees? And she said, no. And I said, is that denying access to sandwiches? Or can you just go to the Subway at noon and purchase your own sandwich?
And a Subway sandwich is more expensive than birth control.
Yes, it's been a while, but as far as I can tell, $5, $6, 20 days a week adds up pretty quick, and it's a lot more than the birth control. But the notion of denying access, whether it's, whether we're talking about voter ID or whether we're talking about birth control, when did the language become acceptable?
Right.
Because it's not correct, it's not a fair description of what's happening, denying access to voting or denying access to birth control. It's not a denying of an access any more than I can't walk through LAX with no ID and expect to get on an airplane. That's not denied access. That is, I did not comply with whatever regulations they put before us.
You need an ID for anything. By the way, every country that I know of, every democracy in the world, you have to have an ID to vote. The idea that this is voter suppression, just like I think telling your child that America hates you is a form of child abuse, I think it is racist. And again, these are not over-the-top words. It is racist to imply that black Americans have greater difficulty getting an ID. Do you know how demeaning that claim of our fellow citizens of the left is? You saw the same film I did, Ami Horowitz going into Harlem in New York City and asking just people on the street, guys, well-dressed, guys not well-dressed, guys who looked like, they were just on skateboards. You have an ID? Yeah. You have a difficulty getting an ID? No. You know where your bank is? Yeah, it's over there, 3 blocks over. They laughed at him. They thought the questions were stupid. Is it hard to get an ID? There wasn't one black he interviewed who even understood why he's asking the question.
Yeah, and again, the soft bigotry of low expectations.
That's exactly right.
So Dennis, let's get on topic here for a second. We'll talk about kids and schools and safe spaces and all that. One of the things I find interesting, and I'm very puzzled by it, troubled and puzzled, is when I was a young person, you would be very hard-pressed to have me say I was scared or I felt threatened or anything of that nature because I had pride. So the notion would be, if I was riding along my bicycle when I was 13 and trying to pull a wheelie and fell off it and tumbled horribly and got what we call road rash from the asphalt, I would immediately pop up and yell, I'm fine, nothing to see here.
That's right.
And then at some point, I would put my head in a mailbox and scream as loud as I could. But to anyone who was standing around watching me attempt to ride this wheelie on my Schwinn, I would tell them I was fine because I would never want to let them see me this way. And when I played football and occasionally you really got hit hard and got the wind knocked out of you, the first thing you would do was pop up and you'd sort of go to the sideline as if you just wanted to go over there to get a little hibiscus tea, and then you'd collapse. But you wouldn't want to give the other team the satisfaction of knowing that they just took the wind out of you, or anyone in the stands, for that matter. And so this notion that there's a cavalcade of young men especially explaining that they felt threatened, that this is hate speak, that they are worried, and this, you know, when somebody puts their hand on their shoulder and says, come this way, that's physical assault, he's invaded my space. I don't get it at all, because it's the opposite of what young men used to be, which is, I'm not scared. I'll do that. Why not? Yeah, that's sure. Let's. I mean, that's how they won wars. That's how they volunteered when they were underage. Whatever it was a point of pride to, even in the face of what would be dangerous circumstances, not say you're scared. Now we have circumstances that pose no danger, and everyone is volunteering that they're scared and saying it aloud. When did that turn around, and then why are young men, and I say men especially because to me there was a stoic nature to guys that somehow got lost in the shuffle?
Well, by the way, even just saying what you did would be regarded at a campus as sexist, because just saying that you want a boy to be a man is today verboten. And when I grew up, that was what I was supposed to become. It was simple as that. Dennis, be a man. Grow up. That's it. Grow up, be a man. Grow up, be a man. It infiltrated my mind. Part of being a man is not to be a wimp. I'm not saying that to be a woman is a wimp. I'm merely saying, though, that it is a curse to women if men are wimps. Ask women who are trying to find a man today to marry what the selections are in at least over 30, let's say, or over 25 even, because boys have not been made into men. And this was part of it. When did it start? It is part of, I think, it is part of where strength does not come from being right, from being truthful, from having valid arguments. It comes from being a victim. Your status in America today is based on how much of a victim you are. So if you feel offended, you are immediately taken seriously. I remember this was a very powerful moment. I began lecturing at 21. I have a very bizarre, we have truly, as you point out, opposite lives. And we've ended up in the same exact spot, which is very touching. But I gave my first lecture.
I think I'm a little above you, but.
No. All right, that's fair.
A little
bit.
A little bit.
I didn't want to say it because it would go to your head.
It's almost mathematically impossible to be exactly the same spot.
That's fair. You're right.
I'm sorry, but continue.
Okay, I will. So I gave my first speech. So when I began in life, I was just speaking, because I had written 2 books on Judaism, so I was speaking in Jewish life. And I would go to synagogue after synagogue to lecture, and they loved me. Oh, this young Jew, he's so eloquent, he's terrific, he's single, we have a girl for him. It was an unbelievable life. Anyway, I was about 27 years old, and I'm at a synagogue in New Jersey, and I gave my opinions, and then a woman gets up. This is the first time it happened, so I was shaken. I don't mean shaken like they're shaken today. I was intellectually shaken. The woman said, "I'm offended by what you said." And I was naive. And I said, "What did I say that offended you?" So then she said where she differed from me. And I said, "So you don't agree with me. Why are you offended, though?" And that's become synonymous. Disagree now means offended.
Right.
Because you have victim status. So argument is not necessary. You are offended is enough for the college to bend to your will. This is the state that we are in, and then you get Play-Doh and stuffed animals in a safe room.
So I always try to look for sort of the path to this, and I agree, the bigger the victim, the more status you have. Right. Certainly on campus. Now, sadly, what happens when you get off campus is you still try to take this currency and nobody gives a shit. They appear to be sympathetic, they appear to listen, and they appear to care, but really all they think is, I don't want to hire this pussy.
Right.
I'm sorry
Right.
to say that, but that is the truth
that's great.
in
That's
real
great.
life.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, to go ahead and try to dissect this, because for me, I'm just a sort of atheist with no education, so I'm able to approach everything from a direction that's different every time. I don't have a set direction. I would assume that everybody wants status. I assume that it's sort of innate, inbred, that everybody wants status in life. And in the past, status in life meant a lot of calories burnt. So status in life in the old America meant that you were going to have to be the state wrestling champion. And that took a lot of running bleachers and a lot of push-ups and a lot of sweating off weight to make cut weight for the next morning were weigh-ins, and that was a lot of work. And then it also meant that a lot of status, as we used to know it in this country, meant a lot of weekends working, a lot of free, a lot of working at night when everyone else clocked out and was going to the bar, the pub, to watch the game or have a drink. You were taking classes at night, or you were in your garage toiling like a young Henry Ford. Whatever it was, that status was a calorie burner, and it meant a lot of hard work. And I think a lot of people, frankly, didn't want to go through what it was going to take to earn that status.
Hold it. That's the word. I was wondering if my favorite verb in English was going to come out, and it did. This is the great distinguishing verb between left and right. It is my favorite verb, earn.
Earn, yes. So status was earned, and it was a pretty big calorie burner, and it meant doing a lot of things that were uncomfortable. I experienced it firsthand when I was a younger person. When we were all done with work, my friends would head off to have a beer and go have a good time, and I would head off to go to the Groundlings to take an improvisational class or go a theater class or an acting class. And they would say, "Where are you going?" And I'd say, "I'm going over to take this class at night." And they'd say, "How much do they pay you?" And I would say, "I pay them." And they'd say, "You don't have car insurance. Why are you paying to take improv classes?" And I said, "Well, it's no fun now, but one day, maybe, it will pay off." And it was uncomfortable, and I would have rather taken the money I gave the Groundlings and spent it on beer or basic cable back then, but I chose to sort of delay this gratification. So everybody wants status, but status is a pain in the ass, and it's a big calorie burner, and somebody figured out, look, instead of doing all the work that it takes to get status in a traditional sense, let's simply do a much easier version of status, which is say, I'm gay, or I'm black, or I'm Hispanic, or I'm a female, or I'm bisexual, or I'm fill in the blank, get some free status,
That's right.
and then I will not have to go to the gym and run on a treadmill in a hefty bag so I sweat off 20 pounds of water weight before the weigh-in. I can do this from my dormitory, ripping a bong load.
Bravo, that's right, that's right. It's the unearned status thing, and here is my dream. I every so often, I actually have bizarre fantasies. Here is a fantasy I have of a bunch of kids going into a dean's office at a college and say that their feelings were hurt or they feel offended, and the dean looking at them saying, "Deal with it." Can you imagine that? First of all, you know he or she would be fired.
Sure.
It's not even an issue. Or even worse, which is what I try to tell young people when I speak to them, the only person on earth who really cares how you feel is you. The other 7 billion people only care how you act. And they don't get that message. You don't care how, I always give the example because I live on airplanes, so I think about this. You live on airplanes a lot too. It's nice to have, I don't want prolonged conversation. I do a lot of work on planes, but I like to have a pleasant human being next to me, right? And
by the way, that pleasant human being would like a small human being next to them. So you are not making their day on that Southwest flight.
Well,
they're looking for someone under
unbelievable.
245
Does he not
to sit
understand
next to them.
How he is hurting my feelings? Does
Somebody
he not
who
understand? Here's a living example. I am a victim.
I'm looking
of big man shaming.
I'm looking for someone who played Peter Pan in the high school production. Sorry.
No, my only point is people don't care how you feel on the plane. They just care how you act. Same with the flight attendant, right? If the flight attendant had a bad day with her husband, or he with his husband, or she with both of her husbands, or the husband with both of his wives, or the man living with his partner but didn't have a good day with his partner, we don't care. We just want you to be nice when you bring us our drinks at our seats. That is what they do not understand. Their feelings matter. That is why you said, what is it? The bottom line is narcissism.
I do believe all roads sort of lead to narcissism. I also believe that everyone here should have a very healthy, no self-esteem, which helps you get through life when you realize quickly, like Dennis, that nobody cares about you.
I didn't say that exactly.
Well,
not many. Not many.
It's not, but it's not a negative.
Right.
Per se.
No, of course, I'm with you on this.
They simply would like to travel through this life. Sometimes it's literally on an airplane. Other times it's just through your day, and have as little friction with other human beings as possible. I'm always curious that when these people on college campuses or wherever they may be make these proclamations, if they really think that those who see them care as much as they do. I never understand that, but on the other hand, when I see people covered with tattoos, I don't get that either, because all it makes me think is they're assholes. It doesn't elicit anything from me, not what they're thinking when they go to the tattoo parlor, what they think they're going to get from me, they never do get from me.
Look, you just won my wife over, by the way. You know by the living martyr, my producer.
Sure.
Yeah. So he.
I know he's sleeved up pretty good.
Yeah,
Alan.
that's right.
Yeah,
totally,
I know he always wears a jacket, but when he takes the
Yes.
jacket off, he's sleeved.
Yes.
It's sleeved. Yeah.
So Alan Estrin's theory. I asked him, "So are you a basketball fan?" He says, "Yeah, there are teams I root for." I said, "Really? Teams?" He said, "Yeah, I see who's playing, and I root for the team with the fewest tattoos." That is how he roots in the NBA. So
yes.
I am surrounded by people. I have to say, for the record, I am anti-tattoo. There's not even an issue about it. However, I will admit, and maybe I'm wrong in drawing this conclusion, but I had a very telling experience many years ago. I was waiting for friends in Hollywood to pick me up to go to the Hollywood Bowl. And I'm standing at a corner, and there's a guy next to me in what's called a wife beater. Are you allowed to say that? I'm not even sure. I'm not kidding. I'm not sure. I don't advocate wife beating for the record. I just want that clear. and he's it's not only that he's wearing this undershirt, but he's all tattooed, and he has, wherever there is an orifice, there is a ring. Mm-hmm. And he keeps staring at me. And I was feeling, if I may share a feeling, I was sharing a bit uncomfortable, and increasingly so as he kept looking at me. And finally, he actually walks over to me, and he says, "Are you Dennis Prager?" And I give you my word, my mind raced and I thought, maybe I'll just say, I'm his cousin. And you have no idea how often I'm mistaken for that jerk. That's what I was thinking of saying. So, but I really, more or less, am incapable of lying. And I look at him and I go, yes, I'm Dennis Prager. And he goes, man, I love you.
You got a lot of range in your fan base. All right, so we're on a campus, and I think we can all agree free speech is a good thing.
Yep.
Slightly overused, I would say, these days. I feel like we should all just sort of attend class and get to work. I'm not sure why everyone has to step onto a soapbox, but free speech is free on campuses unless you're hearing ideas you don't like. Now, the hypocrisy is an interesting thing. It's one of these things that you never really want to be caught engaging in, right? I know somebody like you probably thinks about hypocrisy or being called out, or your worst day would be somebody saying, you say this, but then I've heard you say that, and you have to realize, wow, I am duplicitous or
inconsistent, hopefully just inconsistent, but okay, yeah.
Right. We all used to have a sort of we used to have a setting that we would be in, which would be if you were morbidly obese and you were eating a donut, you wouldn't lecture people on physical fitness. You might think things, but you certainly wouldn't waddle over to the other side of the cafeteria and give someone a serious dressing down about physical fitness while eating an old-fashioned donut with the gut slopping over the fanny pack, right?
Right.
That would be hypocritical.
Right.
And I think there's times when human beings all want to say, do this, do that, but you do sort of catch yourself and go, well, wait a minute. I do this myself, or I engage in that. You wouldn't give someone a lecture on the ills of smoking cigars, for instance. That used to keep a lot of people in line. I feel like that's out the window. The notion that there's a march on this and a rally on that, and then it's a campus, this is the canvas that we all paint free speech on, and then somebody shows up to give a discussion about something you disagree with, and you demand that that person is shut down and unable to speak, is the definition of hypocrisy.
Right, so they have an answer, because it's so obvious that it's bizarre to think that way. I'm for free speech, but I'm shutting down this conservative who's coming to the campus, right? So they have an answer. This is their answer, but I don't know which is scarier, plain inconsistency / hypocrisy, or such staggering unclarity of thought. I think the latter is more frightening. This is what they all say. You can watch it on any video of kids demonstrating against speakers. Of course I'm for free speech. Of course I'm against hate speech. They don't understand that's the point of free speech.
Well, by the way, hate speech, which I will define.
That's correct. That's the second flaw in their argument. Who defines it? The first flaw is free speech was never meant to protect love speech. That's not the point. Nobody ever debates love speech. The whole debate is about hate speech. So they don't get it. They just don't get it because they've never been taught it. Nazis, when I was a kid, American Nazis, there was an American Nazi party, had a march in Skokie, Illinois. They chose Skokie because it was a particularly large number of Holocaust survivors living there. So imagine their cruelty to march in a Holocaust survivor neighborhood with swastikas. And the ACLU and the whole left, the New York Times, all defended them. It's disgusting and so on, but this is America. Even Nazis can march in Skokie. And the argument was a fair one. It was a completely legitimate argument. But now you can't even come and say on a campus, This is considered racist. Richard Blumenthal, Senator, Massachusetts, Connecticut, right? Connecticut, said in hearings with Senator Sessions, now Attorney General Sessions, Mr. Senator Sessions, let me understand something. You were given an award by David Horowitz, and you spoke about how you support him and he's a kindred spirit. Sir, do you know what he said? He said that the reason that there are too many blacks in jail is that too many blacks commit crimes. This was given as an example of racist speech that should invalidate Sessions from being Attorney General. So do you see what has happened? This is now called hate speech. Is it true? Of course it's true. Is it tragic? Of course it's tragic. But first you have to deal with what is true. You were talking about this on my show. It's first let's deal with what's true. Otherwise we can't solve a single problem.
Well, I completely agree, and it's sort of the way we understand. I mean, if we sort of tried to approach social problems like they were medical problems, I think we'd have a much better shot at curing cancer because, you know, I would always, it's funny because I'd always say, Dr. Drew would always say when people would get sick, and they'd always say to him, I've never been sick before. And he'd go, yeah, but you're sick now. And he'd go, but never before.
Right.
And I'd go, he'd say, yes, but here we are. And now let's come up with a tactical scientific approach to fix whatever this problem is. If you're going to be called a bigot for saying I have cancer, and then I'm going to call that hate speak, we're going to have a difficult time getting to a cure here.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. There are questions in the audience. There are answers.
Do we have microphones lined up here? Are there mics?
We have microphones that we shall.
Oh, there aren't?
We shall pass
so
around.
So we'll have to repeat the questions that were posed. Anything you'd like?
Oh, we do have a.
Wait. Oh, so you're going to walk around? Is that it? People should line up here. Yeah. Come up here and line up. Try to come as soon as you can, because otherwise you get caught at the end. Whatever you'd like to ask either of us or both of us or neither of us. It doesn't have to be directed at one of us. By the way, while you're lining up, you want to mention we're going to be doing a documentary together.
Yes.
Yep, this will be a big deal. On what is happening on campuses and how young Americans think. It'll be pretty powerful.
It's called secondhand truth, man. Just go with me, Dennis.
It's called No Safe Spaces, right?
No Safe Spaces,
right.
Yes.
No Safe Spaces.
Yeah, all right, so the microphone, the people are lining up in the aisles, and we'll
Is there a microphone here too, or only on this side? There are both sides? Okay.
Oh, I see. There's another. We have more than one aisle.
Yeah,
all right. We'll have the microphone.
All right.
I'll call you Mr. Microphone. Please be generous with your microphone and hand it to the person who's going to speak into it.
Dennis, as a lesson in clarity, don't you think you should tell these people about Nakbar?
Oh, well, it's a long story, and it's not medium. It's long.
Oh, really? Wow.
I'll just tell you what he wants me to do, and it's extremely funny, but it's probably on YouTube somewhere, is when I ran to the wrong basket in Madison Square Garden. And it is a very funny story. And
your high school team?
Yes, high school team, yeah. And the only reason I was on the team was it was a Jewish high school, and I was 6'4", and that is somewhat of a freak among Jews. And if you were 6'4" at a Jewish high school, if you were not in a wheelchair, you made the basketball team. That was why I made the team. But the whole story is very funny, but I want to hear more questions. Thank you.
Mr. Prager, as a young Jew, and no, I don't need to be hated on for doing my religion. I think I'm in America. And today I was talking to one of my friends who some people think as annoying, but I stand up for him. And he considers himself an atheist. And he's like, from what I could hear, I'm stuck being Jewish. And He was like, because of how the religion is weird, and I wanted to tell him, you don't have to believe in God to be Jewish. Yes, that's the main point of it, but Judaism is more than that. What would you do if you were in my position without offending him? Because in my school they use terms like triggered, and that's when you offend someone.
Your
They say,
school
"I'm
has his
triggered."
school has triggers. That's really sad. No,
They
no,
do.
it's painful to hear. I have an answer for your friend and for you.
That used to be the name of a horse.
I know. I remember that. That's correct. Was it
Roy
G-
Rogers had a
Ro-
horse
was-
named
yes,
Trigger, and that's all we had. There were no trigger warnings. The trigger warning was a horse may be arriving soon.
Yes, exactly. There, I'll give you a very quick answer. I'm glad you asked. Judaism does not make it a demand that you believe in God. Judaism makes it a demand that you struggle to believe in God. Because the word for Jewish people in the Bible is Israel, and Israel is the name that has a meaning. I didn't make this up. It means to struggle with God. So a Jewish atheist has to struggle with God, and a Jewish believer has to struggle with God. So that's the answer. You can't be comfortable.
Being Jewish means never having to say I'm comfortable.
That's right.
So I've noticed quite a bit lately. Actually, it's been going on since Donald Trump has basically been in the spotlight. But I've noticed Facebook specifically has become a cesspool of lies and twisting words, and all of my friends, a lot of them are still in college. They read these and they take them as absolute truths, and then they spread them, and people are not thinking for themselves anymore, and these lies are just spreading. And I've seen it on both sides too, not just the left but the right. And I just want to know what your thoughts are on this, and where can we go from here?
You know, it's interesting because we were talking about narcissism sort of being the catalyst for a lot of this stuff. But I like to take my narcissism and point it toward the light, which is I am way too goddamn busy and important to be online trying to settle people's hash all day long. There are books to write, there's documentaries to make, there's podcasts to do, there's TV shows to do. I always say to people, does it make you money or does it make you happy? And if the answer is no, move on. Thank you. I recently was sitting in Jimmy Kimmel's office, and he was sharing with me a Facebook dust-up between a contemporary of ours who we're very close with, who lives in Santa Monica, so I think you know where his politics are, and another fella who's been in the business for 30 years, who represents Pierce Morgan now, and he wanted to know how you could possibly represent this monster, and it was a back and a forth. And the reason Jimmy was reading it to me is because it was comical, as these two men, combined age 107, were calling each other dickheads on Facebook. And he said to me, Jimmy said, it was funny because we were supposed to be working on his Oscar monologue, but instead he was reading this post from Facebook. And he said, did you see this? And I said, no, but I don't see anything because I don't go to the computer and look for it because it doesn't make me money and it doesn't make me happy. So there's a form of ultimate narcissism, which is I worry about my family, and I worry about my mortgage, and I worry about my business, and I worry about my employees, and I worry about my peace of mind, and I worry about my black lab Philly cheesesteak, and then it trails off after that. I am not interested in going online and converting anybody who doesn't want to, who clearly is not moving on this subject. And it's a sort of a thing that I think we need to adopt in 2017. The thing is if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make the sound, to paraphrase. And if somebody calls you a douchebag on the internet and you never read it, did they ever say it? I choose to never hear it.
So I'll give a not an opposing, just a different response. Whenever people do that, if you want to respond to them, if they say Trump is racist, okay, that's the classic, fine, or misogynist, just say,
I normally don't respond because, I mean, we live in California. Everyone here is so, like, hyper left.
No, that's correct.
And if I do respond,
Right.
I get called racist.
So I didn't know if, I thought you were asking if you do respond what to say. So I'll tell you if you do respond what to say. I buy what Adam said. I just want to say, if you do respond, just always do one thing. May I have an example? What is an example of his racism? So the only one that I know of is what he said about a Mexican-American judge, which was completely inappropriate. I fully understand. So fine. Everybody's made inappropriate comments. He apologized for it, or I don't know, maybe he didn't apologize. Doesn't matter. It doesn't make him a racist, okay? If one comment makes you a racist, then Hillary Clinton is an anti-Semite. She called the guy who ran her husband's congressional campaign that he lost prior, obviously, to being governor of Arkansas. She said, "You're a fucking Jew." And it was reported by a number of people that she said it, and I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal saying Hillary, and the title was, "Hillary Clinton is not an anti-Semite," because we cannot judge what people say by one comment. And but there was no one on the left, I don't believe one. There are liberals. I divide between liberal and left all the time. But there was not one American on the left who has the charity toward Trump that I had toward Hillary Clinton.
I'm also sort of fond of saying two things, by the way. There's never been a better time to be an actual racist, because you get lumped in with me and Trump and Prager and Michael Medved, right? So there's never been a better time to actually be a racist.
Some of the finest Americans.
Right. Number one. But number two, this notion of like, yeah, he's anti-Semitic, he's xenophobic, he's racist, he's a misogynist. Words, 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 and words. And my feeling is I only care about arsonists who set fires. If you have been labeled an arsonist, but you've never struck a match, then I'm not interested in your title, your mantle as an arsonist.
That's a
you
great
must
example.
Set fires to be an arsonist.
Yes.
Us calling everyone an arsonist and then they just go back home and go to bed is not going to set the world on fire. So we are now living in a world where if you replace arsonist with misogynist or homophobe, racist, xenophobe, bigot, whatever it is, but they've never actually, so you can be a misogynist and have never laid your hands upon a woman your entire life or not hired one or done anything that would be discriminatory whatsoever and still have this mantle. I would like to use this arsonist description as a yardstick to measure whatever description we lay on you, which is it's impossible to be an arsonist and not start a fire.
Well
Can
said.
you be a misogynist and never abuse a woman?
Right. Yep. That they say yes. Great. Which side are we up to? Over there? Yep.
Yeah. Dennis, my wife and I are rather conservative. We have a son. Fortunately or unfortunately, he graduated from CSUN here. And he's a little left to us. My question is, which first two of the the Prager University courses, would you recommend that I sit down with them and review it?
Yeah, I have 3.
I'm sorry.
What PragerU?
And what did you recommend, Adam? Yes, by the way, that's not a bad idea. I think that you should try to win them over with non-political stuff first to show that we're human, because you learn at university that the world is divided between the decent and the indecent, which is beautiful. I wish they did teach it that way, but their definition is decent is on the left and indecent by definition is on the right. But if you could have them actually laugh from a person who is not on the left and realize, wow, they're not monsters. And that's a good way to start them. So Adam's courses are a perfect example. Tom Shalhoub of Fox, the Red Eye, gives a magnificent course this week, not comparing yourself to others, and then gradually get them into the other stuff. But it's all very nicely laid out. What it is, I will say this though: if you have any traditional values, and I'll define them, there are 3 primary values. They're on every American coin. Liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum, from many one. There was a belief that this should be a melting pot, which is now considered a racist term on campus, melting pot, because they have black graduations, black dormitories, and everything else that affirms differentness, when the whole point of America is that it's irrelevant what you look like. That America didn't always live by that, of course that's true. Nobody ever lived like that. No place on earth lived like that, but at least we affirmed it as a value, which we do now live by. Anyway, if you have those values and you send your kids to any college, almost any college in America, you are playing Russian roulette with their values. And therefore, I strongly recommend that out of high school, they not go straight into college, that they spend a year as a waiter or waitress or as a construction worker. I'm dead serious. I also recommend that if you have to bribe them, that they watch all 150 courses at Prager University. There's no money in it for me, so I have no self-consciousness about recommending it, because they're free. And you let them watch it and write a synopsis of each of them. Where do they think it's wrong? Where do they think it is right? Then they can get an intellectual and moral inoculation against the drivel that will be given to them in the departments of English, sociology, psychology, anthropology, women's studies, black studies, ethnic studies, Chicano studies, poli-sci, and so on. It is a tragedy. It makes me sad. I have a home with thousands of books. I love the life of the mind, but the mind is being closed at our universities and not opened. You can't send them from high school to college immediately.
My mother attended this campus, this school, after, to be fair to her, about 17 years over at Valley College. She finally 17, I'm being generous and rounding down. At 17 years, she attended CSUN and was a Chicano Studies major. That's why we have so much to talk about at Thanksgiving. The woman is 82 years old, and she said to me about 6 months ago, yeah, but Adam, rich people don't pay any taxes. And I said, yes, they do.
They pay all the taxes.
Literally is going to take that one to her grave. All right, sorry, should we go over here now?
Well, Adam and Dennis, thank you very much for coming here to CSUN. I'm actually a graduate of CSUN almost 10 years ago, so thank you for coming.
Thank you.
The first question I want to ask is for you, Dennis. Will you eventually open up an actual Prager University?
I have an answer, actually. No. I have an answer that you won't expect. I did open up an actual Prager University. It's called Prager University. No, this is very important. The only difference between Prager University and a brick and mortar college are two. The brick and mortar, we don't have that, and we are not accredited to give you a BA that will be recognized as such. But if a university is a place where the mind expands and wisdom is offered, we are a better university than most of those that are accredited and have brick and mortar.
I just told someone in today, a few years from now, the only brick and mortar buildings left will be places that sell brick and mortar. You'll never be able to order brick and mortar online.
Yes.
You'll need to go to a store with a pickup truck.
That is exactly right.
We will actually, now we say brick and mortar as a description of a physical store. My kids will look at brick and mortar stores as places that just sell brick and mortar.
It's sad, but it's true.
Sorry.
It's a lot of truth anyway.
A follow-up.
All right, so we feel bad, but maybe on the second one, can we go over there? Because we'll give one a person. Thank you so much. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Prager.
Hi.
Just to preface this a bit, I recently transferred here to CSUN this semester from Pepperdine University as, unfortunately, a music student. So I'm getting a lot of left stuff. But mainly, it's no matter where I go, be it here, Valley College, CSUN, there's just so much abject hatred for anyone that doesn't toe the left line. Constantly, I'm hearing threats of death for President Trump, day in, day out. Here at Pepperdine, accused of being a white nationalist neo-Nazi myself. It gets a little too much to handle. I was wondering if you had any advice for not committing hopeful career suicide.
Did you want to take that? Suicide advice?
He addressed it to you. I've been listening to your radio show, of course, and hearing about what's going on the campus at Pepperdine and how that's evolved over the recent years. You know, it's a very weird world we're living in, which is you are living in a society where you feel like you're taking crazy pills, but it's everyone else who's taking the crazy pills, and then it's your job to navigate a society where everyone's taking crazy pills.
That's right.
I mean, oh boy, I live in Hollywood, and I don't physically live there, but I have to work in Hollywood. And you want to talk about having to get along with a group that is essentially, Hollywood would be the equivalent to you chucking a rock at a beehive right now, and your job is just to quietly go in, extract the honey, let them know you mean them no harm. You're a simple-minded beekeeper, and they are as agitated as possible.
That's great. That's great.
There is a way, and you're going to have to navigate this and negotiate this, but we're all going to have to navigate this and negotiate this, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. You are going to have to let the people around you know that you are a good person, and that if your opinions differ, they differ, but your baseline is that of a good human being, and you will show that through your actions and through your words and through consistency. And no, it's not going to work if you go online and get into a dust-up with someone on Facebook, but for the people who you attend class with, or the people you socialize with, or the people, family, or people you must communicate with, letting them know that you're a good person. I believe, you know, I'll go out on a limb here, but I do believe that many of my Hollywood friends have said to themselves and about me without being in the room, we disagree wholeheartedly with what Adam is saying on his podcast, but Adam is a good guy, and that is no reason to excommunicate him from our life or to even think he's a bad person because of some of the values and some of the opinions he shares.
But they know you.
They do know me.
Yeah, he's in a different situation. So I have very quick response there. And this is just an addition to what Adam said. I completely concur. First of all, the best revenge is success. And by success, I don't only mean success in your career, but I mean success as a living being. So if you walk around happy, you will drive them crazy. All right? Just want you to know that. You should, so that's very, very important. The fact that you feel suicidal on occasion is not a good sign. They're getting to you. Don't let them get to you. Secondly, if this is any consolation, it's no different than when I went to college. When I was at Columbia for graduate school, I remember walking along Broadway and 116th, 117th, the whole area there, and I feel like I'm an extraterrestrial. You know, the crazy pill thing and so on. Sure. I really, but I had so much confidence that I realized they're wrong. I didn't entertain the notion that men and women were basically the same. I knew I was being taught drivel. But it was worse, by the way, in my generation, because it was the heyday of feminism, and a lot of the women didn't shave. You don't have that as an issue today. I should have committed suicide. That is reason for suicide.
Okay, I'm being told we have time for just one more question. So thank you for those who waited in line, but we simply have time for one more question. So here we go.
Appreciate you taking this question. I'm a big fan of both of you, and I know your basic biographies. Dennis said something pretty revelatory to me on his Book TV interview, which was he was pretty aimless in his early 20s, something similar to you, Adam, in your early 20s, not having a sense of direction.
To be fair to me, I was hapless. And I was also rudderless, but I was never aimless. Let's get it straight.
But as a longtime listener of Mr. Prager, he said something I never heard before, which he did some clandestine work in the Soviet Union, and it seemed to change his life dramatically, and he never really touched on it in that interview. And I was hoping to hear his side of the story, if there was something there, more to it, that really shaped who he is.
Well, I'll be very quick on this one, too. For the record, I was very, very lucky. I was not aimless. I didn't know what I would do for a living. But I was never aimless, and I really take no credit for that. In high school, I knew what I wanted to do, and I do it every day. I wrote in my diary in my junior year, I want to influence people to the good, and that's all I ever wanted to do, and that's all. It's as corny as it sounds. That's what I am blessed to be paid to do what I really wanted to do in high school. I didn't have a clue how I would make money doing it, and it was not a great pickup line when I would meet a girl at a bar or whatever, and she'd say, you know, what do you do? And I'd say, I lecture on ethical monotheism. I always wondered, did I not brush my teeth that day? I didn't quite get it. Why?
You should have started with, I dig your goatee.
Oh, God.
Should I have said Fu Manchu?
Okay. That's a good one. I didn't think of it. I needed you.
That's what they call a comeback, Dennis.
Yes, that is a comeback. No, but there was nothing to come back. They just devolved.
Yes.
You know, you lecture on ethical mind. It's not a sexy thing. But anyway, it worked out. I had a very blessed 20s. But to answer your question very quickly, when I was, for reasons that only God knows, I took Russian in college. Took Russian and Arabic, I guess because I wanted to know what the others thought a lot. So I took Russian and Arabic, and since I also had studied Hebrew, I love languages, and so the Israeli government sent me when I was 20 years old, sent me into the Soviet Union to smuggle in Jewish items and smuggle out Jewish names. So it's fairly dangerous, and I was sent for a month. Because of my knowledge of Russian and Hebrew, I got a lot of information out, and a lot of names out. And it was a life-changing thing to see this happening. And obviously life-changing for me, even professionally, because as soon as I came home, I started lecturing. That's the reason I lectured at 21. And now, back from the Soviet Union as an American young man, I mean, how many kids went to the Soviet Union at 21 and had interesting stories to tell? So that's how I began my...
They called him James Bondberg.
Yes.
Agent Buck 29.
That's good. And I will
I like
end...
my Manischewitz shaken, not stirred.
You know what? That can't be topped. Thank you all very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.